African Mythology, Culture, History, and Mythological Folklore by James Rooks. Narrated by Brandon Suku. Chapter 1. The Value of the Earth. According to a lot of African myths, the creation of heaven precedes the creation of earth, and man was created before the animals. The sun and the moon were given high status, even seen as gods in some societies, and because all African societies depend on rain, it is also held in high regard. The earth is a really crucial aspect in many myths. It's regarded by many as a mother goddess who rules all people and gives birth to new generations of all beings. It is really believed that earth conceals life, safeguarding it from drought and reviving it when the rains come. All creatures are earth and none can live without her. And even the aspects come from the earth, yet the earth itself is rarely worshipped. She is regarded as a powerful spirit, ruling over life and death, moving foothills, woods, and all when angered. It is said that animals comprehend and obey the earth, but that man does not. Some African tribes believe that the spirits live in the sky and manage the rain, while others have faith in water spirits that control the rivers, lakes, and oceans. There also exists African myths of spirits that inhabit rocks, mountains, and plants. Such places are considered sacred. In African folklore, Jok is the concept of the divine. It can be good or wicked, one or many. Unlike Europeans, who believe souls should be separated, African folklore believes Jok is the unified spirit of all superbeings, God and the spirits, the deities, the Holy Spirit, and beings from the other world. African religious belief has faith in the existence of good and evil spirits, and rituals play a very fundamental part in African culture. Bad spirits are believed to trigger misery and health problems, and many societies have spiritual professionals who communicate with ancestral spirits to safeguard against evil. Mediums enter into trance-like states, allowing a spirit to possess their body and use them to communicate or prophesy. African religious specialists go through extreme training, and there are different roles of spiritual specialists consisting of priests, rainmakers, and healers, also called diviners or herbalists. Some African faiths even differentiate more than one spiritual essence residing within an individual. In Nigeria, the Yoruba people actually believe that a person has at least 3 souls. Emi, indicating breath, is a crucial force that keeps man alive. It resides in the heart and lungs and is fed by the wind. Ojiji is a shadow that follows its owner and awaits his return in paradise when he dies. The third being is Elida, or spirit, which must be fed by sacrifices. These souls get away the body at the time of death and all await his return in paradise. African myths on fate. The Yoruba people also really believe that a guy's success or failure in life depends on the choices he made in heaven before his birth. Ori is the Yoruba god in heaven who monitors people's choices. Ori means head or mind. Even the gods themselves depend on Ori to direct their personal lives. Gods and men alike consult their sacred divination palm nuts daily in order to receive direction from Ori. African folklore is given from generation to generation, and these stories are really essential to the traditions and customs of all African people. Tricksters and animals play a typical role in their folklore. These stories are not only amusing, but serve to teach a lesson also, sometimes of a moral value, and other times of survival. West Africans have many tales about a wandering trickster spirit who is connected with change and quarrels. In some stories, he is the messenger between the world and the supreme god. Among the Fon people of Dahomey, Benin, Legba is the protector and trickster of crossroads and entrances. He speaks all languages and has the power to eliminate barriers and provide opportunities. All events start and end with Legba, just because no communication with the gods can exist without first consulting him. African folklore tales about animal tricksters often describe how helpless beings manage to outsmart strong animals. One of the most essential animal tricksters of West African legends is Anansi, who acts on behalf of the sky god, Nyame. Anansi ended up being the king of all stories after showing to Nyame that he could fool a jaguar, hornets, and a fairy. Anansi is often portrayed as a spider, a human, or a mix of both. Other animal tricksters typical in African legends include the tortoise and the hare. There are even stories of animals who help human beings. According to the San Bushmen, the praying mantis provided them words and fire. The Bambara people of Mali declare that an antelope taught them agriculture. Animals play an important role. In other African legends, animals play an essential role in how death entered the world, like the tale of the lizard that carried the message of death to mankind, or the hyena that severed the rope between paradise and earth. Many stories are based upon talking animals with human characteristics, such as greed, enviousness, and solitude. African custom is expressed through many different art forms, such as music, dance, art, sculpture, and beadwork. These customs are deeply implanted into the entire African culture. Many African languages are tone languages, suggesting that pitch level identifies meaning. Oral tradition. Oral tradition is very crucial in African culture, as it guarantees the passage of cultural practices from one generation to another. Listening is an equally essential skill, which has been refined by the conventional oral practices. Numerous tunes and dances have been transferred by word of mouth. Music and poetry in African traditions. Naturally, singing is extremely important to the African civilization just because the tune and rhythm follow the articulation of the song text. The songs are often sung in call and response form. In West Africa, a griot is an appreciation singer or poet who has a repository of oral custom passed down from generation to generation. They must know the traditional songs and must also be able to improvise tunes about the existing events and chance incidents. Music is a form of communication, and it plays a practical role in African society. Songs accompany marriage, births, rites of passage, searching, and even political activities. Music is usually used in different African civilizations to ward off fiends and to pay aspects to good spirits, the dead, and ancestors. Although the musical styles and instruments vary from region to area, there are some typical forms of musical expression. The most considerable instrument in African music is the African drum. It expresses the mood of the people and evokes feeling. The beat of the African drum is the heartbeat of the community there. Dance is an important part of the African culture, and it makes use of symbolic gestures, masks, costumes, body painting, and props to communicate. The dance moves can be easy or intricate with intricate actions including quick rotation, ripples of the physique, and contraction and release. Dance is used to express emotion, whether cheerful or sorrowful, and it is not restricted to just the dancers. Typically, spectators will be motivated to participate in. Conventional African masks. The African masks that are used in dances have religious, ceremonial, and functional origins. The artist who carves the mask will ritualistically cleanse himself and offer prayers to his forefathers for assistance before he begins the actual sculpting of the mask. The African mask represents a spirit, and it is believed that the spirit occupies the dancer as they wear the mask. The chosen dancer goes into a trance-like state so as to receive guidance and knowledge from the forefathers. The dancer will utter and groan the messages got, and a sensible man, who accompanies the dancer, will translate the message. Art. Although music and dance are very crucial African traditions and are really typical forms of communication, many African people express themselves in other art forms also. The Zulu tribe people are very well known for their complex beadwork. The color of each bead carries a particular meaning. The beads have been used to carry messages called usu, a Zulu term loosely translated as love letters. It is an African tradition for young girls to send out a boy a beaded bracelet of different colors. The boy will court her for a while, and at the proper time, he will ask her the meaning of the beads. Art and sculpture are prevalent in African culture, and the most common themes depict a couple, a woman and kid, a male with a weapon or animal, or a complete stranger. Couples are usually freestanding figures of the same size, representing the significance of two as one. A male and female couple in African art normally portrays strength and honor rather than love and intimacy, as it is unusual for African men and women to publicly display their affection. A mom and child couple can represent Mother Earth and her people, or the strong bond between a mother and a child. The masculine figure with a weapon or animal represents honor to departed ancestors. African men are typically honored in warfare, and there's a great focus on weaponry in African art, as it depicts survival and power. When the complete stranger is represented in African art, it usually illustrates somebody from a foreign nation or people that is not invited. Chapter 2. African Facts. Considered by many researchers to be the origin of mankind, Africa is a continent of 54 independent countries and a rich mix of native tribes, cultures, economies, and history. The scenic prettiness and variety is quite spectacular. It is home to huge deserts, rainforests, rugged mountains, and fertile grasslands. It's plentiful in plants and fauna, unsurpassed by any other continent. An ever-increasing number of travelers from around the world are drawn to this unbelievable continent each year to experience its wonders. Yet in spite of its natural wealth and prettiness, Africa includes the 15 least industrialized countries in the world. 70% of its population endures on less than $2 a day. Illness and famine continue to kill its people countless times each year. And even the most basic education is denied to a huge percentage of its children. Africa is considered to be the second biggest continent in the world, with an overall area of around 11 million square miles that represent 5.7% of the Earth's surface area, as well as 20% of the total surface of land on our planet. It has a wealthy geography as well as a fascinating history, thus making it a continent with such biodiversity that's awe-motivating. Africa has a lot more to it than poverty and apartheid, for which it is popular the world over. There are 54 countries as well as quite a few disputed areas. Sudan used to be the biggest country in Africa till it was divided into Sudan and South Sudan. Algeria is now the largest African nation by geographical area. Cairo is the capital city of Egypt and is also the largest city. As far as the size is concerned, along with the population, Africa is the second biggest continent. Africa is filled with some of nature's greatest marvels. There are several facts about Africa given below that will help you to comprehend more about this beautiful continent. Fantastic facts about Africa. One of the most interesting facts about Africa is that the length and breadth of this continent are approximately the exact same. It measures around 4,660 from north to south and from east to west. Africa isn't only the second biggest, but the second most inhabited continent too, and houses about 12% of the world population. Nigeria is the most inhabited country in Africa and has an estimated population of 120 to 140 million. The population in Seychelles is around 80,000 people and is the least inhabited nation. The African continent has around 3,000 unique racial groups, while Nigeria alone has about 370 of these tribes that have been formally acknowledged. You'll find more information on African civilization here. Around 2,000 foreign languages are spoken in Africa, and each of them have different dialects, while Arabic is the language that is most widely spoken in the African continent. The equator walks around 2,500 miles from the west to the east of the African continent, therefore dividing this continent into two separate halves, north and south. It passes through many of the African countries such as Congo, Somalia, Uganda, as well as Kenya. If we pass the records of the fossil remains, Africa seems to be the first continent where humans were found. The fossil remains have indicated that people had inhabited the African continent a long time ago. Africa also boasts having the longest river in the world, which is the Nile, that runs for around 4,150 miles before it meets the ocean. It streams through some African countries such as Ethiopia, Sudan, Uganda, and also Egypt, hence making the land very fertile. The biggest waterfall in Africa is the Victoria Falls, and it lies on the Zimbabwe and Zambia border. It has a height of 355 feet, and the width of the waterfall encounters almost a mile. The largest desert in the world, the Sahara Desert, is also situated in Africa, and it spans across at the very least a dozen countries, around 3.5 million square miles. Mount Kilimanjaro is the biggest mountain in Africa and stands high at 19,340 feet. Lake Victoria is the largest lake in Africa, gauging 26,560 square miles. Madagascar is the biggest isle in the African continent, and it lies just off the east coast of Africa. It has a length of around 1,000 miles with a width of around 350 miles. That island is also the fourth biggest island in the world. Africa also boasts of the best flora and animals in the world. It has the most prospering wildlife in the whole world. It also houses some of the fastest animals on land, like the cheetah, wildebeest, gazelle, and lion. Discover more info on the African animals here. Africa's mining is popular, and the continent produces at the very least 50% of the diamonds and gold in the whole world. The rest of the nations around the world contribute to the remaining 50% of the production of these precious stones and metal. South Africa is also home to the biggest green canyon in the world, and it is referred to as the Blyde River Canyon, and this is also the third largest canyon in the world. If you know any other intriguing facts about Africa that you wish to share with us, please contact us and we will happily display them here. Conventional African customs. Each group of people have customs that are special to them. Though, in all ethnic groups throughout Africa, the family is of the utmost importance and it is shown in the customs of each tribe. One traditional custom made in African society is that of lobola, where the groom pays the father of the bride in order to compensate for the loss of the man's daughter. Typically, lobola was paid in livestock, a valued commodity in many African cultures, but today, many modern-day couples pay lobola in cash. Lobola is intended to unite two families, promoting mutual respect. It also shows that the groom is financially capable of supporting his spouse. The negotiations of lobola can use up to 2 days. The wedding event is held at night when the moon is full. It is considered bad luck if the wedding takes place when the moon isn't bright. The wedding celebrations can last several days, but the bride-to-be's parents or caretakers don't attend just because it is too miserable for them, and the event is meant to be a joyous one. A man can have as many spouses as he can pay for, and the spouses share the duties of the daily tasks, such as childcare, pounding corn, preparing meals, and washing clothes. The practice of polygamy brings more families together and deepens the interest of the welfare in others. The defense of the family is the core value in most African tribes. Members in the people take care of one another, share wealth and food, and assure that no child is abandoned. In African culture, a child learns at an early age how to become a pretty good member of his tribe. Each member of the people belongs to an age that has special services within the tribe. Each person is expected to contribute to the tribe by doing his share of the work and following its customs. The initiation rite is a questionable African custom that varies from tribe to tribe. Circumcision, which is normally performed on males, is, in some cultures, performed on women as well. The routine is normally spread over a period of some months, and the one being circumcised is forbidden from yelling or sobbing because doing so is considered cowardly behavior. The African customs of tribal circumcision has typically triggered mutilation and even death. The victim rarely seeks treatment from a health facility because they are usually abandoned by their family and their people for doing so. It is actually believed that complications occurring from circumcision are the fault of the victim just because they are either being penalized for having done something wrong or they are too weak to be certified as men. Chapter 3. African Culture. In African culture, the self is not separate from the world. It is joined and intermingled with the natural and social environment. It is through relations with one's community and environments that an individual ends up being a person of volition, whose actions and choices impact the whole group instead of just oneself. There is a Xhosa proverb that is rather common to all African civilizations and languages. Umuntu ngumuntu ngumbantu. A person is an individual through persons. The rich and varied African civilization differs not only from one nation to another, but within each country as well. The culture of each ethnic group centers on family and can be found in each group's art, music, and oral literature. Throughout Africa, the people speak a range of languages, practice many faiths, and reside in different kinds of houses. The huge majority of people living in Africa are native. Nevertheless, people from all over the world have migrated to Africa for centuries. Arabs started crossing into North America from the Middle East in the 7th century AD, bringing with them the religion of Islam. Europeans began settling in the southern part of the continent in the mid-17th century, as did South Asians, who settled in the areas of Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania, and South Africa. Over the centuries, African culture has fit together with civilizations from around the world, although much of traditional African customs have remained throughout. Ethnic groups and African tribes have customs that are unique to their culture. The customs and traditions of each group have been woven into a tapestry as colorful and varied as the people of Africa themselves. African art. African arts and craft include sculpture, weaving, beading, painting, pottery, jewelry, headgear, and dress. Art from particular regions have unique attributes depending on beliefs, values, and customs, but typical themes found in art include women, couples, kids, animals, man with a weapon, or a mix of these. Masks are usually a depiction of religious and spiritual beliefs. They are used for standard events to honor them. Clothes. The kind of clothes used across Africa differs from north to south, and by religious beliefs and standard customs. Some societies wear colorful clothing, while others wear less color but include glossy threads in their dressing with minimal jewelry. African food. The environment plays a substantial part in what types of foods are consumed in different parts of the African continent. Most foods include fruit, grain, veggies, milk, and meat products. Quite certain cultural groups have very comparable foods in their foods. For example, a very typical maize/corn-based meal is pap, also named ugali, sadza, nisima, nichima, Chima, Pashto, Tuozafi, Ubgali, Bugali, Sokoro, Sokora, depending upon which part of the continent you are eating it. Music of Africa. African music is as varied as the people, and has also been affected by music from the Western world. Standard music in Southern Africa typically includes drums and singing, and such instruments as the thumb piano accompanied by rattles made from some dried fruit or veggie with seeds inside. Some remarkable cultures in Africa. Men from the Latuka people in Sudan still practice the custom of kidnapping a woman that they want to marry. After a Latuka man has taken his bride, he goes back to the dad of the woman to request for his true blessing. To safeguard their skin from the sun, the Himba people of northern Namibia cover themselves with a mixture of red dirt and milk fat, and so they appear to have reddish skin. The Ojize mix is considered to be a beauty cosmetic. They also use wood ash for cleansing the hair because water is limited. The Algerian men of the Ahagaran Tuareg group wear a veil nearly all the time, occasionally taking them off when in a family group or while they travel. Chapter 4. Some African Gods and Goddesses. Olokun. Olokun, the sea god of the Yoruba people, resides in a palace under the sea, with human and fish attendants. His name means owner of the sea. Once, Olokun challenged the sky god, Olorun. The winner would be the god with the finest clothes. The people would choose the winner. Olorun sent his attendant Chameleon to compete with Olokun. Chameleon matched whatever Olokun wore. Olokun finally gave up the obstacle, and Olorun was announced the winner. Shango, Yoruba god of thunder and lightning. Shango was the fourth king of the old Oyo Empire, the West African center of society and politics for the Yoruba people. The Oyo Empire flourished from the 15th century until 1835. Today, there are about 30 million Yoruba people in West Africa, most in Nigeria. Shango was a powerful king, but some of the people in the Oyo Empire thought he was unjust. When two of his ministers challenged him for the throne, Shango fled into the forest. He roamed in the forest for a long period of time and eventually hung himself from a tree. After Shango passed away, his nemesis's homes were set on fire, most likely by Shango's good friends. However, some people actually believed Shango had gone up into paradise and was sending fire down to earth. That's how Shango became called the god of thunder and lightning. As the god of thunder and lightning, Shango has some powerful energy. In artwork, he is usually depicted with a double axe on his head, the symbol of a thunderbolt, or he is portrayed as a fierce ram. Shango's thunderous energy ended up being a sign of the resistance of the Yoruba people during the 19th century, when many Yoruba people were drawn from Africa to the Americas as servants. Olorun. Olorun, whose name means owner, is the sky god of the Yoruba people. He is also referred to as Olodumare, Almighty. According to the Yoruba people, Olorun created the world and humanity. At one time, the earth was very watery. Olorun had a snail shell, a hen, a pigeon, and some earth. Olorun threw the earth in one little point of the earth and put on it the chicken and pigeon. The two animals spread the earth and created sturdy ground. Mawu. Mawu is the supreme god of the Fan people of Abomey, Republic of Benin. Mawu, the moon, brings cooler temperatures to the African world. She is viewed as an old mother who resides in the west. Mawu has a partner called Liza, and together, they created the world. Their son, Gu, is the smith god, or magnificent tool. They used him to form the entire universe. The serpent Da also helped them throughout the creation. Mawu was the goddess of night, pleasure and maternity. Liza was the god of day, heat, and strength. Liza. Liza was the sun god to the Fan people of West Africa. His sister was the moon god, Mawu. The two were twins, but were also lovers. Together, they created the vast universe with the help of the extraterrestrial serpent, Da. It is said that Liza used his son, Gu, to form the world. Gu was the magnificent tool in the shape of an iron sword. He taught the people various crafts, including but not limited to ironworking. Liza was also the god of heat, work, and strength. Mawu was the goddess of night and maternity. Chapter 5. Why Hippos Do Not Eat Fish. The Kikuyu people believe that in the days of long, long ago, when the good Lord Ngai made his plans for all of the beings upon his earth, he made the hippo as an animal of the forests and plains. However, the hippo was greedy and, finding a lot of food all around him and no adversaries to worry about, he grew fatter and fatter and fatter. And the fatter he grew, the more he struggled with the heat of the equatorial midday sun. Day after day, when he waddled down to the river for his drink, he looked with envy at the little fishes that swam in the pool, which was cooled by the melted snows from faraway Mount Kenya. Oh, he would sigh, how wonderful it would be if I could live, like Ngai's little fishes, in the clear, cool, revitalizing water. The hippopotamus contemplated over his trouble for many days, and ultimately decided to approach the Lord of all creation. "Please, good Lord Ngai," he sobbed loudly to the paradise on one especially hot day, "allow me to leave the forests and the plains. Let me live instead in the clear, cool waters of your rivers and lakes, for the heat of the intense sun is eliminating me." "No," responded Lord Ngai, "for my little fishes are really dear to me, and if you were to live in the rivers and lakes, you might try a real change of your eating practices and start to eat those little fishes. That would never ever do. No, you should continue to live upon the dry land." So the hippo remained, unfortunately, in his home in the forests and plains, where the sun went on to beat down mercilessly on his unprotected hide. "This is more than I can bear," moaned the poor creature. "Please, please, good Lord Ngai, let me leave the forests and plains and become an animal of the rivers and lakes. I assure most consistently that I will not eat your little fishes." The great Lord Ngai thought the matter over, while he towered above the plains baking in the heat of the tropical sun, and ultimately his heart softened. "Well," he concurred, "I'll allow you to live in my rivers and lakes, but how will you prove to me that you aren't eating my little fishes? I am going to depend on the cool of the water by day, and at nighttime I will browse along the banks of the rivers and of the vlays," replied the hippopotamus. "I promise that I will not eat your little fishes." "But that will not be evidence to me that you are keeping your pledge," explained the great Lord Ngai. "Well then," answered the hippopotamus, "I will come out of the water each time that food goes through my body, and I'll spread my dung on the earth with my tail. All that I have eaten will be spread out in your sight, and you will see for yourself that there are no fish bones. Certainly this will be proof enough." So this way, to this extremely day, the hippopotamus comes out of the water to scatter its dung as it admires heaven and says, "Look, Ngai, no fishes." And that is precisely why hippos don't eat fish. Chapter 6. How the Ostrich Got His Long Neck. Mr. Ostrich was a sober-minded, serious partner who was always ready to assist his marriage partner in her family tasks. "My dear," he said to her one night, when their large clutch of eggs appeared practically all set to hatch, "my black plumes cannot be seen in the darkness, so I will secure our eggs by night, and at the same time keep them warm for you. That will leave you free to relax and enjoy yourself until daybreak each morning." he settled clumsily to his unaccustomed task, while his flighty spouse was more than appreciative to be relieved of a responsibility which she already found a trial. She fluffed up her feathers and, to show how delighted she was, she triggered in a cheerful high-stepping dance amongst the low termite mounds that surrounded their nest. The huge birds had chosen the site with care, for they knew that a sitting ostrich hen, with her head down, looks from the range like a gray mound of earth. They had decided to rear their young on the short-grassed plainlands because they could see all around them. For in those days, the ostrich had a brief neck like a guinea fowl and partridge. They had learned the hard lesson that in long grass, their adversaries could assault them before they realized their risk. To keep their valuable eggs safe from the dreaded fires that swept across the plains, the two birds had thoroughly scratched away a broad band of dusty earth in the grass around the minor hollow that was their nest. On the whole, they were a happy pair, although from time to time the partner had disapproved of his partner's high-spirited ways. At this particular time, she should behave more sensibly as she had her eggs to look after. He twitched his massive thighs on the ground as he had seen his spouse do, to move the position of the eggs so that they would lay more easily in their bed, and settled down to his long night's wait. It was moon. The silvery light shed odd shadows and threw up ghostly figures amongst the surrounding mounds of earth. His head was starting to nod with weariness when he ended up being aware of his wife's hissing laugh. He was large awake in a moment. Straining his brief neck to its utmost limit, he saw her dodging in and out between the termite mounds in a wild game of hide-and-seek with a good-looking young ostrich in hot pursuit. This would never do. He half rose from the nest, but sank down again with a sigh. He dared not leave the precious eggs, whatever the reason. What if they were to grow cold while he went to tell his flirting spouse what he thought about her disgraceful behavior? He settled again with some feeling of irritation, but strained his neck further and further to try to spot her as she dodged and raced between the termite mounds on the moonlit field. From time to time, he did catch a glimpse of her and heard her silly giggles, and each time that he did so, he strained and stretched his neck trying to see further and yet more between the nearby termite mounds. At last, the long, tedious night came to an end. As it did so, his partner appeared out of the gray range to take over her responsibilities once more. The ostrich rose stiffly, prepared to penalize his partner for her undignified behaviors, but as he did so, he felt a strangeness in the muscles of his neck. He looked down at his feet and was alarmed to discover how very far from his head they were, and realized with a shock that, as a result of all the straining that he had done during the long night, his neck had stretched and stretched and stretched. He tried to shake it back to its previous length, but no matter what he did, it stayed just the same. He had stretched past return. And that is the reason that the ostrich has a long neck, a lasting memory of a flighty marriage partner. Chapter 7. African Mythology in Zimbabwe and Zambia. African folklore in the regional Tonga tribe of the Zambezi Valley specifies that Nyami, the river god who resides in Lake Kariba, is actually believed to be a serpent-like creature. He is said to be about 3 meters large, but no one dares to guess at his length. Legend has it that the water stains red when he swims past. Chief Sampa Karuma saw him on 2 occasions several years before, but the river god has been in hiding since the white men got there in the country. According to African mythology, he lived under a pretty big rock near the present-day Kariba Dam wall. No tribesmen would venture near it. Those few who did were drawn down with their canoes in the whirlpools and never ever seen again. They called the rock Kariwa, the trap, and for that reason, the name of the lake, Kariba. The rising up water of Lake Kariba covered the rock Kariwa, and it now lies 30 meters beneath the surface, annoying Nyami Nyami. The Tonga people also really believe that Nyami is married and that the structure of the Kariba Dam wall would separate him from his partner. This would anger him greatly, and the river god threatened the peace of the valley. Vengeance of the river god. City dwellers had mocked the stories of Nyami, the river god, but by 1958, the laughter had turned to chilled apprehension, particularly for those working on the task of structure Kariba Dam wall. Survey work on the proposed dam wall started in the late 1940s. On the night of the 15th of February, 1950, a cyclone from the Indian Ocean swept up the valley. Such a thing had never ever been heard about in this landlocked, steady land. 15 inches of rain, driven by a cyclone, fell in several hours. The river rose 7 meters that night. Certain villages were swept away. When the rescue groups finally managed to reach the area 3 days later, the putrefying bodies of antelope and other animals were seen hanging from the tops of trees. The study team had died in a landslide. Work on the dam started in earnest in 1955, but on Christmas Eve that year, an extraordinary flood stormed down the gorge and washed away the foundations of the coffer dam and the recently constructed pontoon bridge. The flood peaked, receded, and then peaked again. This had never happened before, and people began to talk about the river god. Nyami struck a third time in November 1956. The heavy rains fell a month before they were due. Abrupt flash floods impeded work on the dam. The Zambezi, swollen with water from regional catchment parts, would rise over a meter in a night. They were uninformed that 1,300 kilometers away, the Zambezi was mobilizing its forces. It's fed by a catchment area of over 1 million square kilometers, of which almost half is above the lake. Heavy rains were falling throughout this vast region. The water was being hoarded in the floodplains of Zambia and the forests of Angola, and in January the Sanyati River, which went into the Zambezi, nearly near the new wall, all of a sudden came down like a cavalry charge. The river rose nearly 6 meters in the next 24 hours and rose over the cofferdam. The largest digger truck, which had not been moved, vanished immediately. Only in March, after much damage had been done and the job held up some months, did the river begin to diminish. Such a flood ought to occur on average once every 1,000 years. Really, believe it or not, in January 1958, a flood like could be expected to occur only once in each 10,000 years, swept down the riverbed, wreaking havoc on all in its course. 16 million liters per second exploded over the suspension bridge, which buckled and heaved. The North Tower collapsed, and the bridge rose clear of the water, bent like a gigantic bow. Its spine shattered in 3 places, and the Zambezi carried away its battered remains with what seemed a holler of triumph. Finally, in December of 1958, the Kariba Dam was finished, but not before it cost the lives of 80 people. The victorious people felt slightly embarrassed of having actually caused the humiliation of this mysterious and primeval river. African mythology of Nyami today. Today, small earth tremors are occasionally felt around Kariba. Tonga African mythology believes that this is Nyami trying to see his spouse, but he's now cut off from her by the dam wall. When he cannot get through, he turns around with such anger that the entire earth shakes. Chapter 8. The Guinea Fowl Kit. Piri Piri must have been a very happy woman. She was wed to a rich man who had many livestock. But after years of marriage, she was still unable to give him the many kids which a guy like him deserved. She went to see many individuals in the hope that they would be able to resolve her issue, but to no avail. Day after day, she watched as her partner's love for her disappeared before her very eyes. She was very sad the day that her spouse married a new partner, so that he could at last have kids. But she was also happy for him when she learned that his new marriage partner had given him a kid, and after that, another. Each time she learned that the new wife had given birth, she went to offer the newborn a present, yet she was refused each time. The new partner would tell her, "My spouse wasted too many years with you. In just a short time, I have already given him children. Go away since no one wants your gifts." Piri Piri was distressed to see that her husband's love for her that once used to shine in his eyes was slowly replaced by pride for his kids. Yet she went on to work her fields and live life the best she could in her solitude. Some months later, while she was working in her fields, she heard some shrieking from the plants. She approached to see what it was and found a guinea fowl at the top of a branch. He looked at her and cackled. "I am actually lonely, so will you make me your kid?" Piri Piri responded that she could not have a guinea fowl for a kid because everyone would mock her. But he did not forfeit and continued to ask her if she would make him her kid just during the night so that no one would know. After a little thought, she chose that if she kept him as a kid during the night, it would give her company and a person to take care of, so she concurred. The guinea fowl promised that he would come late in the evening and he would leave the home early in the morning so that nobody saw him. That night, when she returned home, she started to prepare her meal when she heard the screeching of the guinea fowl at the window. She let him in, and they enjoyed their meal before going to sleep. They lived extremely happy together, like a mom and kid would. Really usually though, the new wife would pass and jeer at Piri Piri, buffooning her while she operated in her fields. What a waste that her husband gave you so much land to work. You have nobody to feed but yourself. Then she would laugh and go to her own fields to work. Piri Piri would just ignore her remarks. But the guinea fowl could not support that a person talked to his mom like that. So, he flew to the bushes just near the new spouse's fields and started to sing this tune. "Come and eat, my good friends, there's tons of grain. Come and eat, my friends, eat all of this woman's grain." The new partner just thought that it was a bird like all of the others, singing in the shrub. One by one, however, the guinea fowls began to arrive. Soon her fields were filled with guinea fowls that had heard the song and come to fill their bellies. In a panic, the new partner began to shout at them and kill the guinea fowl one after the other, including Piri Piri's son. She immediately prepared them for supper. Her husband was so pleased to see that his wife had prepared so many birds for dinner and thanked her for being such a good woman. They feasted to their heart's content and sat at the table talking. Just as they completed the last bite of the meal, they heard the tune of the guinea fowl. Looking around to see where it was originating from, they found that the singing originated from their own stomachs. They got so scared that they got the knives from the table and cut and stabbed at the birds. The birds flew out of the holes and left the couple dead on the floor. They then returned to the field to eat the remaining grain. When Piri Piri learned what had happened, she was happy that she would no longer have to endure the insults of the new marriage partner. She also got to keep all of her spouse's cattle on his land. Once people heard what took place, there were many men who wanted to marry Piri Piri. After all, she had a really intelligent and intriguing son. This has been African Mythology, Culture, History, and Mythological Folklore by James Rooks. Narrated by Brandon Suku. African Mythology, Mysterious Stories from Ancient Folklore by James Rooks. Narrated by Brandon Suku. Chapter 1. African Culture. Portraying the history of Africa is a challenge due to the scarcity of written sources, with many researchers having to rely solely on oral history, archaeology, and genetics to determine specifics of the continent's past. The recorded history of early civilization started in Egypt and later spread to Nubia and Maghreb and the Horn of Africa. Islam spread throughout Africa throughout the midlives and remains to be the dominant religious belief in northern Africa today. During the late 15th century, Europeans and Arabs took servants from parts of Africa and delivered them overseas to use in the servant trade. Over the 19th and early 20th century, the European colonization of Africa rapidly developed till after the Second World War, where Europe was weakened and decolonization started to happen. Unlike in Europe, where history is typically caught in decaying buildings, in Africa, the story of the continent is found in the people who live there. The society of Africa is incredibly interesting because of the fact it is different, depending upon which nation you visit. The continent is home to diverse populations, tons of which have been affected by external aspects. Each country has its own people, languages, and cultural distinctions. Even small African nations like Uganda have more than 30 recognized tribes. We will now have a look at some of the most well-established products of African culture, including tribes, food, arts, and language. Famous African tribes. The Zulu people are South Africa's biggest ethnic group. It's approximated that between 10 and 11 million people live in the province of KwaZulu-Natal. During the 19th and 20th century, much of South Africa was under apartheid and the Zulu people were classed as third-class residents, often experiencing discrimination. Today, they have equal rights together with all other residents. The Maasai people live in the Rift Valley area of Kenya and Tanzania. They own large herds of cattle, sheep, and goats, which they routinely move to new grazing premises and water sources. They are a proud and independent tribe who base their wealth and power on livestock. The more cattle a Maasai member has, the more wealthy and powerful they are seen as by their people. There are more than 50 unique people living in the Omo River region of southwestern Ethiopia, making it a great place to go to if you happen to be interested in African culture. Tons of these standard customs and beliefs have stayed undamaged as a result of absence of access to the area. African food. Many people living in eastern, western, and southern African villages are farmers. They live nearly completely off the food they grow themselves. Conventional African food is also cost outside markets. In countries like Morocco and Algeria, Cusco is a well-known dish served with meat and vegetables. In Western Africa, it is very common for people to grow and eat cassava, maize, mill, and plantains. When going to African countries, you'll find that they are really traditional, with most women and girls performing the job of cooking meals. Colonization has also impacted the food and drinks served in some parts of Africa, such as Kenya, where it is rather common for people to drink tea. African art. Africans are among the biggest contributors to sculptural art. The art form of African sculpture dates back countless years, with some of the earliest sculptures being found in Egypt. African languages. There are countless native languages and dialects spoken in Africa. Every African nation has its own languages, even the tinier nations. Nevertheless, because of the fact that many African nations were once part of European colonies, lots of people have the ability to speak Creole or Pidgin variations of English, Portuguese, or French. In Northern Africa, Arabic is spoken, whereas in East Africa, Swahili is the dominant language. Africa is really a remarkable continent. When it comes to African history and civilization, there is so much more to learn about. The best way to understand the numerous different customs and cultures is to visit African countries and talk to the people. With some of the most varied customs, languages, and customs in the world, Africa is really an interesting continent. Chapter 2. The Gods and Goddesses of Africa. African folklore covers a vast area. The African continent includes so many countries, regions, languages, people, civilizations, and crossovers that the sheer diversity of prevailing gods would seem overwhelming if there were not several helpful shortcuts. Standard African belief is overwhelmingly monotheistic. There might be spirits and forefathers drifting around, but there's only one God. Early missionaries made a complete pig's ear of their research in this respect and seem to have delighted in cataloging as many heathen gods as they could possibly get away with. African developer gods appear to follow a unique pattern. They're all extremely discontented with their developments. There is much shaking of heads, turning away in sadness and avoidance of contact. The human beings are left to take care of themselves. Attempts to restore contact with their god by building a heavenly ladder are the topic of many a dissatisfied legend. In general, African gods do not like to be bothered, and people have to learn to be content with their lot. But while God sits in paradise, wringing his hands in misery, the ancestral spirits are very going to take an active part in earthly life. Those are mostly into searching in other practical subjects, with food, sex, and alcohol as popular as always. There is a remarkable innocence about the gods of Africa. They appear ignorant and unworldly, believing the best of everybody and optimistically giving the advantage of the doubt to all and sundry. No wonder they are rudely disappointed when it turns out their badly chosen favorites depend on no good. Even interacting with their creation has lots of issues. Vital messages of life and death are delegated to whichever farmyard animal happens to be passing, and the resulting garble is very likely to have exceptionally unanticipated and normally dreadful effects. Chapter 3. The King's Magic Drum. Ephraim Duke was an old king of Calabar. He was a serene man and did not like war. He had a fantastic drum, the property of which, when it was beaten, was always to supply lots of good food and drink. So whenever any nation announced war against him, he used to call all his adversaries together and beat his drum. Then, to the surprise of each, rather than fighting the people, found tables spread out with all sorts of dishes: fish, fufu, palm oil slice, soup, cooked yams and okros, and plenty of palm red wine for everybody. In this way, he kept all the country quiet and sent his adversaries away with full stomachs and in a happy and pleased frame of mind. There was only one downside to having the drum, and that was, if the owner of the drum walked over any stick on the road or stepped over a fallen tree, all of the food would immediately spoil, and 300 Egbo men would appear with sticks and whips and beat the owner of the drum and all of the invited guests extremely significantly. Ephraim Duke was a rich man. He had many farms and numerous slaves, a big store of kernels on the beach, and many puncheons of palm oil. He also had 50 wives and many children. The spouses were all fine women and healthy. They were also good moms, and all of them had lots of children, which benefited the king's house. Every few months, the king used to release invites to all his subjects to come to a big feast. Even the wild animals were welcomed. The elephants, hippopotami, leopards, shrub cows, and antelopes used to come, for in those days there was no trouble, as they were nice with man, and when they were at the feast, they didn't kill one another. All the people and the animals were too envious of the king's drum and wanted to have it, but the king would not part with it. One early morning, Ikwar Edom, one of the king's spouses, took her little daughter to the spring to wash her, as she was covered with yaws, which are bad sores all over the body. The tortoise happened to be up a palm tree, just over the spring, cutting nuts for his midday meal. And while he was cutting, one of the nuts fell to the ground, just in front of the child. The little girl, seeing the good food, sobbed for it, and the mom, not knowing any better, picked up the palm nut and gave it to her daughter. The tortoise saw this, and he climbed down the tree, and asked the woman where his palm nut was. She replied that she had given it to her kid to eat. Then the tortoise, who very much wanted the king's drum, thought he would make plenty palaver over this and push the king to give him the drum. So he said to the mother of the kid, "I'm a poor man, and I climbed the tree to get food for myself and my family. Then you took my palm nut and gave it to your child. I will tell the entire matter to the king and see what he needs to say when he hears that one of his partners has taken my food. For this, as everyone knows, is a very serious criminal offense according to native custom." Ikwar Edom then said to the tortoise, "I saw your palm nut lying on the ground, and thinking it had fallen from the tree, I gave it to my little girl to eat, but I did not take it. My spouse the king is a wealthy man, and if you have any problem to make against me or my kid, I am going to take you before him." So when she had completed washing her daughter at the spring, she took the tortoise to her partner and told him what had happened. The king then asked the tortoise what he would accept as compensation for the loss of his palm nut, and offered him money, cloth, kernels, or palm oil, all of which things the tortoise refused one after the other. The king then said to the tortoise, "What will you take? You might have anything you like." And the tortoise instantly pointed to the king's drum and said that it was the only thing he wanted. In order to get rid of the tortoise, the king said, "Well, take the drum." But he never told the tortoise about the bad things that would happen to him if he stepped over a fallen tree or walked over a stick on the roadway. The tortoise was really happy at this and brought the drum home in triumph to his spouse and said, "I am now a rich man and shall say goodbye to work. Whenever I want food, all I have to do is to beat this drum, and food will instantly be given to me, and plenty to drink." His marriage partner and kids were really pleased when they heard this, and asked the tortoise to get food at once, as they were all hungry. This the tortoise was only too delighted to do, as he wished to display his recently obtained wealth, and was also rather hungry himself. So he beat the drum in the same way he had seen the king do when he really wanted something to eat. And immediately, plenty of food appeared. So they all took a seat and made a great feast. The tortoise did this for 3 days, and every little thing went well. All his kids got fat and had as much as they could potentially eat. He was thus extremely pleased with his drum. And so as to show his riches, he sent invitations to the king and all the people and animals to come to a banquet. When the people got their invitations, they chuckled, as they knew the tortoise was extremely poor. So just a few participated in the banquet. But the king, understanding about the drum, came. And when the tortoise beat the drum, the food was brought as normal in great abundance, and all the people took a seat and enjoyed their meal very much. They were very much astonished that the poor tortoise must be able to entertain so many people, and told all their friends what fine dishes had been placed before them, and that they had never ever had a much better supper. The people who had not gone were really sorry when they heard this, as a good feast, at someone else's expense, is not provided every day. After the feast, all the people looked upon the tortoise as one of the wealthiest guys in the kingdom, and he was very much respected in consequence. Nobody, except the king, could comprehend how the poor tortoise could all of a sudden amuse so extravagantly. But they all comprised their minds that if the tortoise ever gave another banquet, they would not refuse again. When the tortoise had been in possession of the drum for a few weeks, he ended up being lazy and did no work, but tackled the country boasting of his riches, and took to consuming too much. One day, after he had been drinking a lot of palm white wine at a far-off farm, he began home carrying his drum. But having had way too much to drink, he did not notice a stick in the path. He walked over the stick, and naturally the Jew was broken simultaneously. Yet he did not know this, as nothing occurred at the time, and eventually he came to his home extremely exhausted, and still not well from having drank way too much. He tossed the drum into a corner and went to sleep. When he got up in the early morning, the tortoise was starving, and as his marriage partner and children were calling out for food, he beat the drum. But rather than food being brought, the home was filled with Egbo guys, who beat the tortoise, his marriage partner, and children badly. At this, the tortoise was very upset, and said to himself, "I asked everyone to a feast, but only a few came, and they had plenty to drink and eat. Now, when I want food for myself and my family, the Egbos come and beat me. Well, I'm going to let the other individuals share the same fate, as I don't see why I and my family should be beaten when I have given a banquet to all people." He therefore simultaneously sent out invitations to all the guys and animals to come to a huge dinner the next day at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. When the time came, many people came, as they did not wish to lose the chance of a totally free meal a second time. Even the ill guys, the lame, and the blind got their good friends to lead them to the banquet. When they had all arrived, with the exception of the king and his partners, who sent excuses, the tortoise beat his drum as normal, and after that rapidly hid himself under a bench where he could not be seen. His wife and children had been sent away before the feast, as he knew what would undoubtedly happen. As soon as he had beaten the drum, 300 Egbo guys appeared with whips and began flogging all the visitors, who could not leave, as the doors had been fastened. The whipping went on for 2 hours, and the people were so badly penalized that a lot of them had to be brought home on the backs of their good friends. The leopard was the only one who left, as directly he saw the Egbo guys arrive, he knew that things were likely to be undesirable. So he gave a huge spring and jumped right out of the compound. When the tortoise was satisfied with the beating the people had received, he snuck to the door and opened it. Individuals then escaped, and when the tortoise gave a particular tap on the drum, all of the Egbo guys disappeared. The people who had been beaten were so upset and made so much palaver with the tortoise that he comprised his mind to return the drum to the king the next day. So in the morning, the tortoise went to the king and brought the drum with him. He told the king that he was not satisfied with the drum and wished to exchange it for something else. He did not mind so much what the king gave him so long as he got the amount for the drum, and he was rather happy to accept a certain number of slaves, or several farms, or their equivalent in fabric or rods. The king, though, refused to do this. But he was rather sorry for the tortoise. He said he would present him with a magic fufu tree, which would offer the tortoise and his family with food, provided he kept a specific condition. That the tortoise gladly consented to do. Now this fufu tree only flourished once a year, but every day it dropped fufu and soup on the ground, and the condition was that the owner should collect enough food for the day, once, and not return again for more. The tortoise, when he had thanked the king for his kindness, went home to his marriage partner and told her to bring her calabashes to the tree. She did so, and they gathered plenty of fufu and soup quite sufficient for the whole family for that day, and went back to their home really happy. That night, they all feasted and enjoyed themselves. However, one of the sons, who was extremely greedy, thought to himself, "I wonder where my dad gets all this good food from. I must ask him." So in the morning he said to his father, "Tell me, where do you get all this fufu and soup from?" But his dad refused to tell him, as his spouse, who was a cunning woman, said, "If we let our children know the secret of the fufu tree, someday when they are starving, after we have got our day-to-day supply, one of them might go to the tree and collect more, which will break the juju." However, the jealous son, being determined to get plenty of food for himself, chose to track his father to the place where he acquired the food. This was rather difficult to do, as the tortoise always headed out alone, and took the greatest care to prevent anyone from following him. The boy, though, soon thought about a plan, and got a calabash with a long neck and a hole in the end. He filled the calabash with wood ashes, which he got from the fire, and after that, got a bag which his dad always carried on his back when he headed out to get food. In the bottom of the bag, the boy then made a little hole and placed the calabash with the neck downwards, so that when his dad walked to the fufu tree, he would leave a little path of wood ashes behind him. Then, when his father, having slung his bag over his back as usual, set out to get the daily supply of food, his greedy son followed the path of the wood ashes, taking great care to hide himself and not to let his dad view that he was being followed. At last, the tortoise reached the tree and positioned his calabashes on the ground and gathered the food for the day, the boy watching him from a short distance. When his dad had finished and went home, the boy also returned, and having had a good meal, said nothing to his parents or caretakers, but went to sleep. The next morning, he got some of his brothers, and after his father had finished getting the daily supply, they went to the tree and collected much fufu and soup, and so broke the juju. At daytime, the tortoise went to the tree as normal, but he could not find it, as during the night, the entire bush had grown up, and the fufu tree was hidden from sight. There was nothing to be seen but a thick mass of prickly tai-tai palm. Then the tortoise at the same time knew that someone had broken the juju, and had gathered fufu from the tree 2 times in the exact same day. So he returned very regretfully to his house, and told his spouse. He then called all of his family together and told them what had happened, and asked who had done this wicked thing. They all denied having anything to do with the tree. So the tortoise in misery brought all his family to the place where the fufu tree had been, but which was now all prickly tai-tai palm, and said, "My dear marriage partner and children, I have done all that I can for you, but you have broken my juju. You must thus for the future live on the tai-tai palm." So they made their home beneath the irritable tree. And from that day, you are going to always find tortoises living under the prickly tai-tai palm, as they have absolutely nowhere else to go to for food. Chapter 4. Why the Bat Flies by Night. A bush rat called Oyat was a great good friend of Imiyong, the bat. They always fed together, but the bat was jealous of the plant rat. Once the bat cooked the food, it was always great, and the shrub rat said, "How is it that when you make the soup, it is so yummy?" The bat responded, "I always boil myself in the water, and my flesh is so sweet that the soup is good." He then told the plant rat that he would show him how it was done. So he got a pot of warm water, which he told the shrub rat was boiling water, and jumped into it, and very soon afterwards came out again. When the soup was brought, it was as strong and good as usual, as the bat had prepared it beforehand. The bush rat then went home and told his marriage partner that he was going to make great soup like the bat's. He thus told her to boil some water, which she did. After this, when his partner was not looking, he delved into the pot and was soon dead. When his spouse looked into the pot and saw the dead body of her partner boiling, she was very angry and reported the matter to the king, who gave orders that the bat should be made a prisoner. Everyone ended up to catch the bat, but as he expected trouble, he flew away into the plant and hid himself. All day long the people tried to catch him, so he had to change his habits, and only came out to feed when it was dark. And that is exactly why you never see a bat in the daytime. Chapter 5. The Hare and the Lion. One day, Sungura, the hare, wandering through the forest in search of food, glanced up through the boughs of a large calabash tree, and saw that a great hole in the upper part of the trunk was lived in by the bees. Thereupon he returned to town in search of someone to go with him and help get the honey. As he was passing the home of Buku, the huge rat, that deserving gentleman welcomed him in. So he entered, sat down, and mentioned, "My father has passed away, and has left me a hive of honey. I would like you to come and help me to eat it." Obviously, Buku leapt at the offer, and he and the hare started off immediately. When they arrived at the great calabash tree, Sungura explained the bee's nest and said, "Go on, go up." So, taking some straw with them, they went up to the nest, lit the straw, smoked out the bees, put out the fire, and set to work eating the honey. In the middle of the feast, who should appear at the foot of the tree but Sim Bachelor's degree, the lion? Looking up and seeing them eating, he asked, "Who are you?" Then Spoongura whispered to Buku, "Hold your tongue. That old fellow is crazy." But in a very bit, Simba roared out angrily, "Who are you, I say? Speak, I tell you." This made Buku so afraid that he blurted out, "It's only us." Upon this, the hare said to him, "You just cover me up in this straw, contact us to the lion to stay out of the way, and after that, toss me down. Then you'll see what will happen." So Buku, the big rat, covered Sungura, the hare, in the straw, and after that called to Simba, the lion, "Stand back. I'm going to toss this straw down, and after that I am going to boil down myself." When Simba went back out of the way, Buku tossed down the straw, and as it lay on the ground, Sungura crept out and fled while the lion was looking up. After waiting a minute or two, Simba roared out, "Well, boil down, I say." And there being no help for it, the big rat came down. As quickly as he was within reach, the lion seized him and asked, "Who was up there with you?" "Why," said Buku, "Sungura, the hare. Didn't you see him when I threw him down?" "Of course I didn't see him," replied the lion, in an incredulous tone, and without squandering more time, he ate the huge rat, and after that looked around for the hare, but could not find him. 3 days later, Sungura got in touch with his acquaintance, Kobe, the tortoise, and said to him, "Let us go and eat some honey." "Whose honey?" inquired Kobe, very carefully. "My father's," Sungura responded. "Oh, all right, I'm with you," said the tortoise excitedly, and away they went. When they reached the great calabash tree, they went up with their straw, smoked out the bees, took a seat, and began to eat. Just then, Mr. Simba, who owned the honey, came out again, and, looking up, inquired, "Who are you up there?" Sungura whispered to Kobe, "Keep quiet." But when the lion repeated his question madly, Kobe ended up being suspicious and said, "I will speak. You told me this honey was yours. Am I right in presuming that it belongs to Simba?" So, when the lion asked again, "Who are you?" he replied, "It's only us." The lion said, "Boil down then," and the tortoise answered, "We're coming." Now, Simba had been keeping an eye open for Sungura since the day he caught Buku, the big rat, and, presuming that he was up there with Kobe, said to himself, "I have got him this time for sure." Seeing that they were caught again, Sungura said to the tortoise, "Wrap me up in the straw, tell Simba to stand out of the way, and then toss me down. I'll wait for you right below. He cannot hurt you, you know." "All right," said Kobe. But while he was wrapping the hare up, he said to himself, "This fellow wants to escape and leave me to bear the lion's anger. He shall get caught first." Because of that, when he had bundled him up, he called out, "Sungura is coming," and tossed him down. So Simba caught the hare and, holding it with his paw, said, "Now, what shall I do with you?" The hare responded, "It's of no usage for you to try to eat me. I am very rough." "What would be the best thing to do with you then?" asked Simba. "I think," said Sungura, "you should take me by the tail, try me around, and knock me against the ground. Then you might be able to eat me." So the lion, being tricked, took him by the tail and whirled him around. But just as he was going to knock him on the ground, he slipped out of his grasp and ran away, and Simba had the mortification of losing him again. Angry and dissatisfied, he turned to the tree and contacted us to Kobe. "You come down also." When the tortoise reached the ground, the lion said, "You're pretty hard. What can I do to make you eatable?" "Oh, that is simple," chuckled Kobe. "Just put me in the mud and rub my back with your paw until my shell comes off." Immediately on hearing this, Simba brought Kobe to the water, put him in the mud, and began, as he supposed, to rub his back. But the tortoise had slipped away, and the lion continued rubbing on a piece of rock until his paws were raw. When he looked down at them, he saw they were bleeding, and, seeing that he had again been outsmarted, he said, "Well, the hare has done me today, but I am going to go searching now till I find him." So Simba, the lion, set out immediately in search of Sungura, the hare, and as he went along, he inquired every one he met, "Where is the house of Sungura?" But each person he asked replied, "I don't know." For the hare had said to his marriage partner, "Let us get rid of from this home." Therefore, the folks in that area had no knowledge of his whereabouts. Simba, however, went along, continuing his queries, till currently one answered, "That is his house on the top of the mountain." Without loss of time, the lion climbed the mountain and quickly reached the place suggested, only to find that there was nobody in the house. This, however, did not trouble him. On the contrary, saying to himself, "I'll hide myself inside, and when Sungura and his spouse get home, I'm going to eat them both." He got in the house and lied down, awaiting their arrival. Pretty soon along came the hare with his partner, not thinking of any threat. But he very soon found the marks of the lion's paws on the steep path. Stopping at once, he said to Mrs. Sungura, "You return, my dear. Simba, the lion, has passed this way, and I think he must be trying to find me." But she responded, "I won't return. I'm going to follow you, my spouse." Although considerably pleased at this proof of his marriage partner's love, Sungura said strongly, "No, no. You have good friends to go to. Return." So he encouraged her, and she returned. But he continued, following the footmarks, and saw, as he had presumed, that they went into his home. "Ah," said he to himself, "Mr. Lion is inside, is he?" Then, carefully going back a little way, he called out, "How do you do, house? How do you do?" Waiting a minute, he remarked loudly, "Well, this is really unusual. Every day, as I pass this place, I say, 'How do you do, house?' and the home always addresses, 'How do you do?' There should be someone inside today." When the lion heard this, he called out, "How do you do?" Then Sungura burst out laughing and screamed, "Oh ho, Mr. Simba! You're inside, and I'll bet you want to eat me. But first, tell me where you ever heard of a home talking." Upon this, the lion, seeing how he had been tricked, responded madly, "You wait until I acquire you. That is all." "Oh, I think you will need to do the waiting," wept the hare, and then he fled, the lion following. But it was of no usage. Sungura totally tired out old Simba, who, saying, "That rascal has beaten me. I don't want to have anything more to do with him," returned to his home under the great calabash tree. Chapter 6. Why the Sun and the Moon Live in the Sky. Many years ago, the sun and water were great good friends, and both lived on the earth together. The sun very usually used to check out the water, but the water never returned his visits. At last, the sun asked the water why it was that he never ever came to see him in his house. The water replied that the sun's house was not huge enough, and that if he came with his people, he would drive the sun out. He then said, "If you wish me to visit you, you should build a huge compound. But I warn you that it will need to be a significant place, as my people are really numerous and use up a lot of room." The sun promised to build a very big substance, and soon afterwards he returned home to his partner, the moon, who greeted him with a broad smile when he opened up the door. The sun told the moon what he had promised the water, and the next day commenced building a big substance in which to amuse his friend. When it was finished, he asked the water to come and visit him the next day. When the water came, he called out to the sun and asked him whether it would be safe for him to get in, and the sun replied, "Yeah, come in, my friend." The water then started to flow in, accompanied by the fish and all the water animals. Very soon the water was knee-deep, so he asked the sun if it was still safe, and the sun again said, "Yes," so more water came in. When the water was level with the top of the man's head, the water said to the sun, "Do you want more of my people to come?" And the sun and moon both answered, "Yes," not knowing any better. So the water flowed on, until the sun and moon needed to perch themselves on the top of the roof. Again the water attended to the sun, but getting the same exact answer, and more of his people rushing in, the water soon overflowed to the top of the roofing system, and the sun and moon were forced to go up into the sky, where they have remained ever since. Chapter 7. The Story of the Lightning and the Thunder. In the olden days, the thunder and lightning lived on the earth among all the other people, but the king made them live at the far end of town, as far as possible from the other people's houses. The thunder was an old mother sheep, and the lightning was her son, a ram. Any time the ram snapped, he used to set about and burn houses and knock down trees. He even did damage on the farms, and at times killed people. Whenever the lightning did these things, his mother used to call out to him in a really loud voice to stop and not to do any more damage. But the lightning didn't care in the least for what his mom said, and when he was in a bad temper, used to do a large amount of damage. At last, the people could not stand it any longer, and grumbled to the king. So the king made a special order that the sheep, Thunder, and her son, the ram, Lightning, should leave the town and live in the far plant. This did not do much good, as when the ram snapped, he still burned the forest, and the flames sometimes spread to the farms and consumed them. So the people grumbled again, and the king eradicated both the lightning and the thunder from the earth and made them live in the sky, where they could not cause so much destruction. Ever since, when the lightning is angry, he commits damage as previously. But you can hear his mom, the thunder, rebuking him and telling him to stop. Sometimes, though, when the mom has disappeared some range from her naughty son, you can still see that he is upset and is doing damage, but his mom's voice cannot be heard. This has been African Mythology, Mysterious Stories from Ancient Folklore by James Rooks, narrated by Brandon Suku. African Mythology, Folklore, Creatures, and Myths from Africa by James Rooks, narrated by Brandon Suku. Chapter 1. History of Africa. The written history of Africa begins in the 4th millennium BC with the rise of Egyptian civilization. Throughout centuries, many varied societies began flowing into the continent and generating a range of civilizations and faiths that spread out across the different regions of Africa. Early foreign occupation. The Romans colonized all of North Africa in the 1st century BC, spreading Christendom throughout the big parts of the area as far as south as Kush and Ethiopia. Nevertheless, the spread of Islam began in the late 7th century in North and East Africa, leading to new cultures like those of the Swahili in East Africa and the Songhai Empire in the sub-Saharan West. The rise of Islam created a boost in the Arab servant trade, which culminated in the 19th century and ultimately resulted in the pushed transport in the Atlantic servant trade and the start of European colonization throughout Africa, which had remarkable effects on the history of Africa. In West Africa, the Muslim North had little influence on the independent kingdoms in the forested areas of West Africa. The LFE federal government, the first of the Yoruba city-states, was established under a priestly king and was the spiritual and cultural center of the region. At the start of the 14th century, Yoruba land developed a community east of LFE that developed in the Benin Empire. Benin became an independent trading power by the 15th century, cutting off LFE's access to coastal ports. Benin included much of southeastern Yoruba land and the western Igbo by the 16th and 17th centuries. The Bantu migrations. The Bantu people had settled the areas south of the Limpopo River by the 4th or 5th century, displacing and absorbing the Kosan-speaking tribes who moved gradually southwards. In the eastern Cape Province, the southernmost group is the Kosa people, who integrate certain linguistic characteristics from the earlier Khoisan people. Settlers in Southern Africa. In 1487, Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias made his stamp on the history of Africa by being the first European to reach the southernmost suggestion of Africa. In 1652, the Dutch settled in the Cape of Good Hope area and established a portal between Europe and the East on behalf of the Dutch East India Company. The region was seized by Great Britain in 1795 to prevent the French from taking control of it, but also to use Cape Town as a stopping point en route to Australia and India. The Dutch gained back possession in 1803, but when the Dutch East India Company declared bankruptcy, the British annexed the Cape Group in 1806. The partitioning of Africa. By the mid-19th century, Protestants were carrying on missionary work on the Guinea coast in South Africa and in the Zanzibar dominions. The missionaries became explorers or representatives of trade and colonialism. In the last quarter of the 19th century, lines of partition were drawn across Africa, marking possessions of Germany, France, Britain, and other great powers. None of the African cultures were consulted throughout the partitioning, and an international treaty was signed that ignored the ethnic, social, and economic composition of the people living in the area. This has been the reason for limitless years of ethnic or tribal dispute as the African countries have fought to acquire their independence back. African history is harsh. Even to this day, dispute exists in between the African tribes and the different ethnic groups. Chapter 2. African people with standard African cultures. The Maasai of Kenya and Tanzania, population plus or minus 840,000. Savannas, lions, safari lorries, and a red-robed Maasai, standing classy and slim against the boundless horizon. The red-clad Maasai of Kenya and Tanzania are synonymous with the Great Plains and savannas of Africa. They are distinguished warriors and pastoralists who for hundreds of years strolled the wild of East Africa. Masinta, the first Maasai, got a gift of cattle from Ngai, the sky god, who lowered them to earth on a leather thong. Since that time, cattle have been viewed as sacred, and their value is measured up to only by the value of their children. Undoubtedly, A very big herd and a very big family are the marks of a truly effective Maasai. The savanna land that comprises the popular parks of Ngorongoro, Amboseli, Serengeti, the Masai Mara, and Tsavo was all once the nomadic range of the Maasai people. Despite the pressures of the contemporary world, the Maasai have fought to protect their way of life, and because of that, any East African safari is awash with the sight of colorful Maasai herding their cattle, walking along roadways, or dancing the adumu. Amongst the most famous Maasai traditions are the leaping dance, the wearing of vibrant shuka, spitting, and the drinking of blood. The adamu is the leaping dance which is performed as part of the initiation rite when young people become men. Accompanied by song, sets of men take turns to see who can leap the greatest. The routine is performed to show expertise and fitness, and it forms a part of the celebration when the boys become qualified bachelors. He who jumps the greatest attracts the best bride. The vibrant colored cloth worn by the Maasai is known as shuka. Red is considered to be a spiritual color and represents blood and is the basic color for all shuka. Aside from these qualities, it also protects the Maasai from wild animals. Orange is for hospitality, warmth, and friendship. Blue is for the sky, which provides the rains for the livestock. Green is nourishment and production. Yellow is for fertility and growth. Together, these lively African clothes are what makes the Maasai so distinctive in East Africa. While in Western traditions, saliva is a strictly private and personal matter, in Maasai society and custom, it is considered exceptionally all the best to be shared. When shaking the hand of an older, it is very important to spit in someone's palm, and to ward off evil spirits, one should spit onto a newborn child's head. Spitting is one thing, consuming blood totally another. That's right, the Maasai are hematophages, meaning that they drink blood for nutrition. It is curious because while they drink cow's blood, typically combined with milk, they're opposed to eating wild animals, and the usage of beef is reserved for unique occasions only. The Maasai revere their cattle, and for this reason, the letting of blood causes no enduring damage to their bovine buddies. The Himba of northwest Namibia. Population, plus or minus 50,000. The desolate Kunene region of northwest Namibia is home to a durable people called the Himba. Hunter-gatherers and pastoralists, the Himba descend from the southward migrating Herero of Angola. Life for the Himba focuses on the holy fire called Okuruo. Okuruo, via the smoke, symbolizes a connection with their forefathers, who are in direct communication with their god, Mukuru. The fire burns at the center of the village and is never allowed to go out, and each family has a firekeeper whose job it is to tend the sacred blaze. The Himba are a nomadic African people and typically travel from waterhole to waterhole, tending their cattle and goats. Day-to-day tasks are typically split between the sexes, with the women doing the hard jobs of carrying water, milking cows, building homes, and raising children, while the guys manage politics and tend animals. This division even encompasses the use of water for bathing, which is reserved specifically for guys. Females use herb smoke from fire to cleanse their pores and maintain personal hygiene. Remarkably, the standard clan structure of the Himba is bilateral, apparent in only a handful of traditional peoples everywhere in the world. Bilateral descent means that each clan member belongs to two clans, that of the mother and that of the father. Under this special arrangement, the sons deal with the dad's clan, as do the spouses. However, inheritance passes from the maternal uncle. Living in such an extreme environment, it is believed that this bilateral descent offers a better chance of survival. The most distinct quality of the Himba is their special accessory. The distinctive red ochre body paint and elaborate hairdos have become associated with any safari to the Kunene region of Namibia. Hairstyles symbolize status, age, and social standing. From children with clean-shaven heads to braids and plaits, dealing with forwards and backwards, and finally to the orimbe, a sheepskin leather accessory used by women who have children. The typically red ochred hairdos are both transcendent and beautiful. The red ochre body paint of the Himba, called ochis, is made from butter, animal fat, and a naturally happening earth pigment that contains iron oxide. The Himba women use this mix to their skin to safeguard them from the severe sun and pest bites, lock in moisture, and to enhance themselves. Because of the striking appearance that this red paste creates, the Himba people of Namibia has become called the Red People of Africa. The Zulu of South Africa, population between 10 and 13 million. The Zulu people are the biggest ethnic group in South Africa. They have come down from East African origins and over centuries, moved south throughout what's referred to as the Great Bantu Migration. The Zulu rose into a formidable empire under the leadership of Shaka in the early 19th century. Under his management, the Zulu kingdom broadened and played an essential role in the history of South Africa. Over time, the Zulu developed a fearsome reputation that is still apparent today. The Zulus of today are contemporary and progressive. While conventional clothes is reserved for unique occasions, the Zulu keep strong connections with their ancestral and historic roots. As a people, the Zulu are said to be warm-hearted and congenial, and it is to them that we owe the principle of Ubuntu. Ubuntu states that we are people, not just because of our individuality, but by virtue of our connections to other individuals, therefore underlying the value of relationships. The Zulu, while predominantly Christian, have maintained the belief in their supreme being, Unkulunkulu, who is the creator of all life. While Unkulunkulu is remote and removed, all fortune, bad luck, good, or misfortune is credited to ancestral spirits or Amadlozi. Put simply, the ancestral spirits are the spirits of the dead, specifically of people who were appreciated and successful in life. By giving sacrifices to the ancestral spirits, the Zulu people seek to impact their lives on a day-to-day basis, and all marital relationships or births are marked by sacrificial offerings. The Zulu are also renowned for their experienced craftsmanship, from earthenware pottery to weaving, but most significantly, their beadwork. Bright-colored beads are woven into intricate patterns which are highly ornamental, but also functional. The patterns and colors have meaning. Here's an example. A triangle is the sign used for a girl, while an inverted triangle suggests a boy. Joined triangles tip to tip suggests a married man, while triangles joined base to base is a married woman. Each color comes replete with the duality of life and has both a negative and a favorable connotation. Here is an example. Red is for love and enthusiasm, but can also represent anger and distress. Likewise, blue is the color of faithfulness and demand, but also of enmity and dislike. The significance is complex and special, while also being functional and gorgeous. It's no surprise, then, that curio stores from airports to cultural towns and traveler attractions around the country are all stocked with Zulu beadwork curios. The Zulu nation is a happy one. They have opened cultural villages like Shakaland in KwaZulu-Natal, where you can experience their culture firsthand. From standard homes and dress to dancing, pottery and beadwork, you can even help to brew conventional beer. However, don't forget, the real Zulus are the ones you will meet at lodges, as guides and on the South African streets. The Bushmen, San or Khoisan, of Southern Africa. Population, about 80,000 between South Africa, Botswana, and Namibia. Referred to as the first people of South Africa, the Khoisan are renowned for their close connection to nature, their nomadic lifestyle, and their language that consists of clicking noises. Regretfully, they're also associated with the predicament of minorities in Southern Africa and have been variously hunted, exploited, and pushed off their land. Today, the survival of the San and their way of life hangs precariously in the balance. Generally, the San people were hunter-gatherers who lived off the land, roaming vast systems of bushveld all over Southern Africa for various reasons consisting of mining, farming, and the creation of national forests. The Bushmen have been forced into even tinier ranges. Today, they're restricted to little clusters around the Makadi-Gadipan. The Bushmen were the great artists of Southern Africa, and their charming rock art, going back countless years, can be found in caves and rock overhangs all over the nation. The San used pigments made from mineral deposits, ochres, blood, and egg to fashion wonderful images of human beings and animals. For many years, it was actually believed that the paintings were solely representations of everyday life. And it is from caves in the Drakensberg Mountains that we know the area was once home to leopard, eland, and elephant, which are now extinct in the area. Yet, modern-day theories associate the paintings of this African tribe to a much more exciting idea. It's really believed that the caves were spiritual sites, a little bit like cathedrals, used by shamans as a user interface with the spirit realm. The depictions are both access points to these worlds and records of the encounters. What anthropologists believe is that rock art is a pictorial representation of the famous trance dance. The magical trance dance is integral to the customs and beliefs of the Bushmen. Also known as the healing dance, this routine brings together the whole community. While the community members maintain rhythm through clapping and chanting, the healers and senior citizens, who lead the ceremony, dance around the fire, marking, clapping, and imitating animals. The effort, joined by hyperventilation, induces an effective trance-like state in which they can go into the spirit world. The dance has a number of functions, from healing disease to eliminating what they call star sickness, which triggers ill will, anger, arguments, and envy. The San are a marginalized tribe. Few of these gentle African people live the way their ancestors did. Examples and remnants of San civilization can still be found where they're purposefully being protected, and you can see old San rock art at many sites across Southern Africa. The Southern Ndebele people of South Africa. Population, about 1.1 million. The Southern Ndebele are widely dispersed throughout the northeast provinces of South Africa: Mpumalanga, Gauteng, and Limpopo. The Ndebele people are considered to be cousins of the Zulu, and as such, share linguistic similarities. The Ndebele are, however, special in the expression of their culture and their beliefs. In traditional Ndebele society, illness is really believed to be triggered by spells or curses. They are considered to be an external force caused on an individual. The conventional therapist, or sangoma, is needed to do fight with these forces using medicines like herbs or by tossing of bones. All izangoma, men and women, have the ability to commune with the ancestral spirits. Even so, it is their ability to beat disease that specifies their success or failure. Both boys and girls go through initiation rites, and initiation schools are held each 4 years. When Ndebele boys reach 18 years of age, they are grouped into a routine or ndanga. The regiment is given a name that comes from a cycle of 15 or 13 names, depending on the tribe, but the initiation rites, that include circumcision, are shrouded in mystery. For their initiation rites, Ndebele girls must wear a variety of colorful beaded hoops or izigolwan around their limbs, waistline, and neck. They are kept in isolation and trained to become matriarchs and homemakers. To celebrate their coming out, the izigolwan are traded for hard leather aprons called amafefetu. To emphasize the value of this occasion, family members and friends collect throughout the initiation period. They participate in activities and celebrations that mark this essential event, which symbolizes the shift of an individual from youth to the adult years. While the Ndebele traditions of shamanism and initiation are interesting, what truly sets them apart is their special creative style. Women are accountable for decorating the homestead, and often the facade and sides of structures are brightly painted with striking geometric patterns filled with color. While standard designs used earth ochres and soft dyes, modern Ndebele designers use a lot more lively and vivid scheme. The designs have become associated with South Africa, and one artist, Esther Mlangu, has acquired international popularity. Her designs have appeared all around the world, on the tails of jumbo jets, to museums, and personal art collections. She even became not only the first woman, but also the first African to be asked to do the prominent BMW art car, hence putting her in the company of Warhol, Liechtenstein, and Hackney. The Samburu of northern Kenya. Population, about 160,000. The Samburu people from north-central Kenya are pastoralists from the Great Plains of the Samburu region. They are carefully associated to the Maasai people of Kenya and are said to have migrated south from the Nile region of North Africa. The Samburu people speak a dialect of the Ma language, which they share with the Maasai. The Samburu people, nevertheless, are considered to be much more remote, as the area that they live in is dry and arid, and so can support less life. Pastoralists, the Samburu raise mostly livestock, but also keep other animals like goats, sheep, and even camels. Just because of the dry environment that they live in, this African people is typically nomadic. Continuously in search of pastures for their livestock, much of the dispute in their ever-shrinking range is triggered by the quest for land. The Samburu diet, like the Maasai, consists of milk and animal blood, while eating is reserved for unique occasions. The Samburu are renowned for their vibrant clothing and their unique social structure. The guys wear pink or black cloth in a manner similar to the Scottish kilt and decorate themselves with bracelets, anklets, and pendants. The warrior age group, or Moran, are known to wear their hair in long braids. The women, on the other hand, keep their heads shaven and wear two cloths, one around the waistline and the other around their chests. The fabric is typically blue or purple, and the women adorn themselves further by using ochre to their bodies in a similar style to the Himba of Namibia. What sets the Samburu apart, though, is their gerontocracy. A gerontocracy is a social structure which is governed strictly by the elders who make all of the choices. The leaders are the oldest members of the civilization, and they have the last word in all matters, and also having the power to curse younger members of the tribe. The supreme source of power for the deeply religious African tribe of the Samburu is their god, Nkai. The seniors responsible for law and order are fervent and follow his guidance in all matters. African tribes, travel, and etiquette. We live in an amazing age where worldwide travel is fairly fast and easy. You no longer really need to be an anthropologist to visit these unbelievable African tribes and to make memories that will last a lifetime. Here are a few tips on regional etiquette and society to help you on your way. Look before you leap. Understand the fact that you are a visitor in another person's country, province, and home. Be mindful of them and their conventional customs. Ask questions, and do not presume anything. Typically, taking photos is fine, but it does not hurt to ask first. Taking the time to check will make you a welcome guest wherever you go. When in Rome, not every little thing you encounter will be to your taste, but that's the whole reason we travel. A double dosage of flexibility and patience will go a long way. Sing your heart out. Dance to the dance. Allow yourself to be led on a gorgeous journey. Smile. If you are not exactly sure what to do, smile. Smiling is a universal language of goodwill. Use it liberally and use it well. There will be uncomfortable travel, bad food, exhaustion, and many other less than desirable situations. These are inevitable. What we can choose is what we give to the world and the cultures we go to. So smile at the chauffeur, at your host, at the women, the children, the shopkeepers, and the passers-by. Be in time, not on time. In Africa, it is more crucial to be in the moment than to count the seconds on the clock. People in the present are more valuable than appointments in the future. Focus less on the schedule and more on the people you are with. Africa's people are truly what makes it such a fantastic place, and it is well worth making the effort to be with them. Chapter 3: The Man Who Never Lied. Once on a time, there lived a smart man by the name of Mahmud. He never ever lied. All the people in the land, even the ones that lived 20 days away, knew about him. The king became aware of Mahmud and ordered his subjects to bring him to the palace. He looked at the smart man and asked, "Mahmud, is it true that you have never lied?" "It's true." "And you will never lie in your life?" "I'm sure of that." "All right. Tell the truth, but be careful. The lie is shrewd and it gets on your tongue easily." Some days passed and the king called Mahmud once again. There was a big crowd. The king was about to go hunting. The king held his horse by the hair. His left foot was already on the stirrup. He ordered Mahmud, "Go to my summer palace and tell the queen I will be with her for lunch. Tell her to prepare a huge banquet. You will have lunch with me then." Mahmud bowed down and went to the queen. Then the king laughed and said, "We will not go searching, and now Mahmud will lie to the queen. Tomorrow we will laugh on his behalf." But the wise Mahmud went to the palace and said, "Maybe you should prepare a huge banquet for lunch tomorrow, and perhaps you should not. Maybe the king will come by noon, and maybe he won't. Tell me, will he come or won't he?" asked the queen. "I don't know whether he put his right foot on the stirrup or he put his left foot on the ground after I left." Everybody waited on the king. He came the next day and said to the queen, "The wise Mahmud, who never ever lies, lied to you yesterday." But the queen told him about the words of Mahmud, and the king realized that the wise man never ever lies and says only that which he saw with his own eyes. Chapter 4: Clever Jackal Gets Away. "Hawoo, hawoo, hawoo, my kids," Gogo started one evening. "You know, cleverness is a very important thing to own. Why, cleverness has helped Nagwaja out of the cooking pot more than once." "The jackal is also a creative animal, isn't he, Gogo?" asked little Sipo, who was quite happy that his label was Mpu Ngushe. Gogo, in fact, had given him that name just because of the loud howl he had made as a baby. Sipo liked to think it was just because he was pretty fast and nimble as a jackal. Gogo laughed and looked at the child at her feet. Yes, my boy, you are right. Jackal is a really creative animal. In some cases, too creative for his own good. I remember how he helped Jabu, the herd boy, by fooling Bubesi back into the snare. Tell us another tale about Jackal, Gogo, asked Sipo. Yeah, Gogo, her other grandchildren chorused. Please tell us. All right, my children. However, listen and learn. Gogo settled her round self down more easily upon the tree stump. Kwasuka Sukela. One day, long ago, Jackal was trotting through a narrow, rocky pass. As he often did, he kept his nose to the ground as he ambled along to catch the weird fragrance. Never know when I'm going to come across my next meal, he thought to himself. Although it was highly not likely that he would find a rat out in the midday heat. However, perhaps he could catch a lizard or more. Unexpectedly, he knew a movement ahead of him in the pass. Oh no, Jackal groaned and stopped dead still in his tracks. Lion was coming toward him. Understanding he was too close to leave, Jackal was filled with fear. He had played so many tricks on the great Bubesi in the past, he was sure that Lion would take this opportunity to get his revenge. In a flash, Jackal had an idea. Help! Help! Sobbed Jackal. He cowered down on the cliff path, looking above at the rocks. Lion stopped short in surprise. Help! Jackal howled, using the fear he felt in the middle of his chest to highlight his cry. Jackal glanced up at Bubesi. Oh, great Nkosi, help! There is no time at all to lose. See those great rocks above us? They are about to fall. We will both be crushed to death. Oh, magnificent Lion, do something! Save us! And Jackal cowered even lower, his paws covering his head. Lion looked up, most alarmed. Before he even had an actual chance to think, Jackal was asking him to use his strength to hold up the overhanging rock. So Lion put his brawny shoulder to the rock and heaved. Oh, thank you, great king, yelped Jackal. I will rapidly fetch that log over there to prop under the rock, and we will both be conserved. With that, Jackal bounded out of sight. Lion was left all alone to struggle under the weight of the unmoving rock. Just how long he stayed there before he realized that this was another technique, we will never know. But this much we do know. Jackal continued to live by his wits. Chapter 5. The Tortoise with a Pretty Daughter. There was once a king who was extremely effective. He had great influence over the wild beasts and animals. Now the tortoise was looked upon as the wisest of all monsters and guys. This king had a boy named Ekpenian, to whom he gave 50 girls as partners, but the prince didn't like any of them. The king was really upset at this, and made a law that if any man had a child who was finer than the prince's wives, and who found favor in his son's eyes, the girl herself and her father and mother should be killed. Now about this time, the tortoise and his spouse had a child who was very stunning. The mother thought it was not safe to keep such a fine kid, as the prince may fall for her. So she told her partner that her daughter ought to be killed and thrown away into the plant. The tortoise, however, was unwilling, and hid her till she was 3 years old. One day, when both the tortoise and his wife were away on their farm, the king's son happened to be hunting near their house, and saw a bird set down on the top of the fence around the home. The bird was watching the little girl and was so entranced with her prettiness that he didn't notice the prince coming. The prince shot the bird with his bow and arrow, and it dropped inside the fence, so the prince sent his servant to collect it. While the servant was looking for the bird, he came across the little girl, and was so struck with her form that he immediately returned to his master and told him what he had seen. The prince then broke down the fence and found the kid, and fell for her at the same time. He remained and talked to her for a long time, until at last she agreed to become his marriage partner. He then went home, but hid from his father the fact that he had fallen for the gorgeous daughter of the tortoise. But the next morning, he sent out for the treasurer and got 60 pieces of fabric and 300 rods, and sent them to the tortoise. Then, in the early afternoon, he decreased to the tortoise's house and told him that he wished to wed his daughter. The tortoise saw at once that what he had feared had happened, and that his life was in danger. So he told the prince that if the king knew, he would kill not only himself, the tortoise, but also his marriage partner and daughter. The prince replied that he would be killed himself before he allowed the tortoise and his spouse and daughter to be killed. Ultimately, after much argument, the tortoise consented to hand his daughter to the prince as his spouse when she reached the proper age. Then the prince went home and told his mom what he had done. She was in great distress at the idea that she would lose her child, of whom she was extremely proud, as she knew that when the king heard of his son's disobedience, he would kill him. Having said that, the queen, though she knew how angry her partner would be, wanted her son to marry the girl he had fallen for. So she went to the tortoise and gave him some money, outfits, yams, and palm oil as further dowry on her child's behalf in order that the tortoise should not give his daughter to another man. For the next 5 years, the prince was continuously with the tortoise's daughter, whose name was Adet. And when she was going to be put in the fatting house, the prince told his father that he was going to take Adet as his wife. On hearing this, the king was very upset, and sent out word all round his kingdom that all people should come on a certain day to the marketplace to hear the palaver. When the selected day came, the marketplace was rather filled with people, and the stones belonging to the king and queen were positioned in the middle of the marketplace. When the king and queen arrived, all the people stood and welcomed them, and then they muffled their stones. The king then told his attendants to bring the girl Adet before him. When she arrived, the king was rather astonished at her prettiness. He then told the people that he had sent for them to tell them that he was angry with his son for disobeying him and taking Adet as his spouse without his knowledge, but that now he had seen her himself, he needed to acknowledge that she was really beautiful, and that his son had made a good choice. He would thus forgive his child. When the people saw the girl, they agreed that she was really fine and quite worthy of being the prince's marriage partner, and pled the king to cancel the law he had made completely, and the king agreed. And as the law had been made under the Egbo law, he sent for 8 Egbos, and told them that the order was cancelled throughout his kingdom, and that for the future, nobody would be killed who had a daughter more lovely than the prince's spouses, and gave the Egbos palm red wine and money to eliminate the law, and sent them away. Then he declared that the tortoise's daughter, Adet, should wed his son, and he made them wed the same day. A great feast was then given which lasted for 50 days, and the king killed 5 cows and gave all the people plenty of fufu and palm oil slice, and positioned a ton of pots of palm white wine in the streets for the people to drink as they liked. The women brought a big plate of the king's substance, and there was singing and dancing kept up day and night during the whole time. The prince and his companions also played in the market square. When the banquet was over, the king gave half of his kingdom to the tortoise to rule over, and 300 servants to work on his farm. The prince also gave his father-in-law 200 women and 100 girls to work for him. so the tortoise became one of the wealthiest guys in the kingdom. The prince and his marriage partner lived together for a really good many years till the king passed away, when the prince ruled in his place. And all this shows that the tortoise is the best of all guys and animals. Moral: always have pretty daughters, as no matter how poor they might be, there is always the chance that the king's child may fall in love with them, and they might hence enter of the royal house and get much wealth. Chapter 6. The Woman with Two Skins. Iyamba I of Calabar was a really effective king. He fought and dominated all the surrounding countries, eliminating all the old guys and women, but the able-bodied guys and girls he caught and restored as servants, and they worked on the farms till they passed away. This king had 200 wives, but none of them had borne a boy to him. His subjects, seeing that he was being an old man, pled him to wed one of these spiders' daughters, as they always had lots of children. However, when the king saw the spider's daughter, he did not like her, as she was ugly, and the people said it was because her mother had had so many kids at the same time. Even so, to please his people, he married the ugly girl and placed her among his other wives. But they all complained because she was so ugly and said she could not live with them. The king, for that reason, built her a separate house for herself, where she was given food and drink the same as the other wives. Each mocked at her on account of her ugliness. But she wasn't really ugly, but gorgeous, as she was born with two skins, and at her birth her mom was made to guarantee that she needs to never eliminate the ugly skin till a certain time showed up, save only throughout the night, and that she must put it on again before dawn. Now the king's head partner knew this, and was very scared lest the king ought to find it out and fall for the spider's daughter. So she went to a Jew man and offered him 200 rods to make a potion that would make the king forget altogether that the spider's daughter was his wife. That the Jew man finally consented to, after much bargaining over the price, for 350 rods. And he made up some medicine, which the head spouse blended with the king's food. For some months, this had the effect of making the king forget the spider's daughter, and he used to pass rather near to her without identifying her in any way. When 4 months had elapsed, the king had not once sent out for Adiaha, for that was the name of the spider's daughter. She started to get tired and went back to her parents or caretakers. Her dad, the spider, then took her to another Jew man who, by making spells and casting lots, very soon discovered that it was the king's head wife who had made the Jew and had enchanted the king so that he wouldn't look at Adiaha. He, for that reason, told the spider that Adiaha should give the king some medication which he could prepare, which would make the king remember her. He prepared the medicine, for which the spider had to pay a large amount of cash. And that day, Adiaha made a small dish of food, into which she had put the medicine, and presented it to the king. As soon as he had eaten the meal, his eyes were opened, and he acknowledged his wife, and told her to come to him that very evening. So in the afternoon, being extremely cheerful, she decreased to the river and washed, and when she returned, she put on her best cloth and went to the king's palace. As soon as it was dark and all the lights were out, she managed her ugly skin, and the king saw how gorgeous she was, and was very happy with her. But when the cock crowed, Adiaha pulled on her ugly skin again, and went back to her own home. This she did for 4 nights running, always taking the ugly skin off in the dark, and leaving before daytime in the early morning. In the course of time, to the great surprise of all the people, and specifically of the king's 200 partners, she brought to life a boy. But what surprised them many of all was that the only one son was born, although her mom had always had a great many children at a time, normally about 50. The king's head wife became more envious than ever when Adiaha had his son, so she went again to the Jew man, and by giving him a huge present, induced him to give her some medicine which would make the king sick and forget his son. and the medicine would then make the king go to the Jew man, who would tell him that it was his child who made him sick, as he wanted to rule rather than his father. The Jew man would also tell the king that if he wanted to recover, he must throw his son away into the water. And the king, when he had taken the medication, went to the Jew man, who told him everything as had been organized by the head wife. However, at first the king did not want to ruin his son. Then his chief subjects begged him to throw his child away, and said that perhaps in a year's time he may get another son. So the king at last agreed, and tossed his son into the river, at which the mom grieved and sobbed bitterly. Then the head marriage partner went again to the Jew man and got more medicine, which made the king forget Adiyaha for 3 years, during which time she was in mourning for her son. She then went back to her father, and he got some more medicine from his Jew man, which Adiyaha gave to the king. And the king knew her and called her to him again, and she coped with him as previously. Now the Jew who had helped Adiyaha's dad, the spider, was a water juju, and he was prepared when the king tossed his child into the water, and saved his life and took him home and kept him alive. And the boy grew up really strong. After a time, Adiyaha brought to life a child, and her, the envious spouse, also convinced the king to throw away. It took a longer time to encourage him, but at last he concurred, and threw his daughter into the water too, and forgot Adiyaha again. Yet the water Jew was all set again. And when he had saved the little girl, he thought the time had shown up to penalize the action of the jealous partner. So he set about among the head boys and encouraged them to hold a wrestling match in the marketplace weekly. That was done, and the water Jew told the king's child, who had become very strong and was really like his dad in appearance, that he must go and wrestle, and that no one would have the ability to stand before him. It was then set up that there would be a grand fumbling match, to which all the greatest men in the country were invited, and the king promised to attend with his head partner. On the day of the match, the water Jew told the king's child that he need not be in the least scared, and that his Jew was so powerful that even the greatest and best wrestlers in the nation would not be able to stand up against him for even a few minutes. All the people of the nation came to see the great contest, to the winner of which the king had promised to present rewards of cloth and cash, and all of the greatest men came. When they saw the king's child, whom nobody knew, they chuckled and said, "Who is this little boy? He can have no chance against us." But when they came to wrestle, they very soon found out that they were no match for him. The boy was really strong, undoubtedly, wonderfully made, and good to look upon, and all the people were shocked to see how like he was to the king. After wrestling for the majority of the day, the king's child was declared the winner, having tossed each who had stood up against him. In fact, some of his challengers had been badly hurt, and had their arms or ribs broken owing to the incredible strength of the boy. After the match was over, the king presented him with fabric and money, and welcomed him to dine with him in the evening. The boy happily accepted his dad's invite, and after he had had a really good wash in the river, put on his fabric, and went up to the palace, where he found the head chiefs of the nation and some of the king's most favored partners. They then took a seat to their meal, and the king had his own child, whom he did not know, sitting right next to him. On the other side of the boy sat the jealous marriage partner, who had been the reason for all the trouble. All through the supper, this woman did her best to make friends with the boy, with whom she had fallen violently in love on the account of his gorgeous appearance, his strength, and his being the best wrestler in the nation. The woman thought to herself, "I will have this boy as my partner, as my partner now is an old man, and will definitely quickly die." The boy, though, who was as wise as he was strong, was quite knowledgeable about everything the envious woman had done. And though he pretended to be very flattered at the advances of the king's head partner, he did not react very easily, and went home as soon as he could. When he went back to the water juju's home, He told him every little thing that had happened, and the water Jew said, "As you are now in high favor with the king, you should go to him tomorrow and plead a favor from him. The favor you will ask is that all the nation shall be called together, and that a particular case will be tried, and that when the case is completed, the man or woman who is found to be in the wrong will be killed by the Egbos before all the people." So the following early morning, the boy went to the king, who readily granted his request, and at the same time sent out all round the country designating a day for all the people to come in and hear the case tried. Then the boy went back to the water Jew, who told him to go to his mother and tell her who he was, and that when the day of the trial came, she was to take off her ugly skin and appear in all her attractiveness, for the time had come when she no longer need to wear it. That the child did. When the day of trial arrived, Adiyaha were in a corner of the square, and nobody identified the lovely complete stranger as the spider's daughter. Her child then took a seat beside her, and brought his sister with him. Instantly his mother saw her, and she said, "This should be my daughter, whom I have long grieved as dead," and embraced her most affectionately. The king and his head spouse then showed up, and sat on their stones in the middle of the square, all the people saluting them with the typical greetings. The king then resolved the people, and said that he had called them together to hear a strong palaver at the request of the young man who had been the victor of the fumbling, and who had promised that if the case went against him, he would offer up his life to the Egbo. The king also said that if, on the other hand, the case was determined in the boy's favor, then the other party would be killed, though it were himself or one of his partners. Whoever it was would need to take her or his put on the killing stone, and have their heads cut off by the Egbos. To this all the people agreed, and said they wished to hear what the boy had to say. The boy then walked around the square, and acquiesced the king and the people, and asked the question, "Am I not worthy to be the son of any chief in the country?" And all the people answered, "Yes." The boy then brought his sister out into the middle, leading her by the hand. She was a stunning girl and well made. When each had looked at her, he said, "Is not my sister worthy to be any chief's daughter?" And the people responded that she was worthy of being any person's daughter, even the king's. Then he called his mother, Adiyaha, and she came out, looking extremely lovely with her best fabric and beads on. And all the people cheered, as they had never ever seen a finer woman. The boy then asked them, "Is this woman worthwhile of being the king's partner?" And a shout went up from each present that she would be a proper wife for the king, and appeared that she would be the mother of a lot of fine healthy sons. Then the boy pointed out the jealous woman who was sitting beside the king, and told the people his story, how that his mom, who had 2 skins, was the spider's daughter, how she had wed the king, and how the head spouse was jealous, and had made a bad Jew for the king that made him forget his spouse, how she had convinced the king to toss himself and his sister into the river, which, as they all knew, had been done. But the water Jew had saved both of them, and had brought them up. Then the boy said, "I leave the king and all of you people to judge my case. If I have done wrong, let me be killed on the stone by the Egbos. If, on the other hand, the woman has done evil, then let the Egbos handle her as you may decide." When the king knew that the wrestler was his child, he was very glad, and told the Egbos to take the envious woman away and penalize her in accordance with their laws. The Egbos decided that the woman was a witch, so they took her into the forest and tied her up to a stake, and gave her 200 lashes with a whip made from hippo hide, and after that burned her alive, so that she ought to not make any more trouble. And her ashes were thrown into the river. The king then embraced his wife and daughter, and talked to the people that she, Adiyaha, was his proper marriage partner, and would be the queen for the future. When the palaver was over, Adiyaha was dressed in fine outfits and beads, and carried back in state to the palace by the king's servants. That night, the king gave a big banquet to all his subjects and told them how glad he was to return his beautiful partner, whom he had never known appropriately before, also his child who was stronger than all men, and his fine daughter. The banquet continued for 166 days, and the king made a law that if any woman was found out getting medicine against her spouse, she would be killed simultaneously. Then the king built 3 new substances and positioned many slaves in them, both males and females. One compound he gave to his marriage partner, another to his child, and the third he provided to his daughter. They all lived together rather happily for some years till the king passed away, when his son came to the throne and ruled in his stead. This has been African Mythology, Folklore, Creatures, and Myths from Africa by James Rooks, narrated by Brandon Suku.